There are many complex things in our world, such as rocket science. And why do we wait to find the perfect TV show before we start eating our food? And why is it that we can drink a drink, but not food a food? And why does manga make me feel dumb sometimes? Could it be because I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed? Or my terrible habit of reading multiple stories consecutively? It could be a combination of both, but I think it's a little more complicated than that. I recently finished reading No Guns Life by Tasuku Karasuma. It's a manga consisting of 13 volumes, and whilst I really enjoyed it from start to finish, I did feel a little confused at times, and I don't think it's because it's too complex. So, what was it then? Well, let's break it down a little bit. But first, fun fact, No Guns Life also has an anime, but given the reviews, I think you are better off with the manga. So, what's No Guns Life? Don't worry, I'll be as spoiler-free as I usually am. It's a story taking place in a future where many humans have become cyborgs, also known as extended. However, with the Great War having recently ended, many extended, who are now former soldiers, begin resorting to crime in order to survive. Which reminds me of a movie I saw not that long ago called Cherry with Tom Holland, about a young man who joins the military and goes to war, and upon returning, spirals into a life of addiction and crime due to severe PTSD received from his time in combat overseas. It's a decent movie and heavily based on real-life events rooted in the author's own experiences, but I digress. It is fair to say that No Guns Life shares some of these themes and perhaps is inspired by the heavy psychological damage received by soldiers serving their time in war and having difficulty integrating themselves back into society. Our story follows Juzo Inui, an amnesiac private detective who works as a resolver, taking on cases relating to extended and priding himself on always seeing a case to completion. His distinguishing feature is that his head is a giant functioning handgun, specifically a revolver. The revolver that's a resolver. You can trust the Japanese to have an awesome imagination. This gun for a head is a trademark trait of the Gun Slave Unit, aka GSU model of overextended used in the war. However, he is unable to fire it himself and requires someone else to do so, only granting the privilege to people he trusts out of a desire to not become a tool. And you get a sense of this quite quickly in the manga. He is precious about his head. His head is immensely powerful, firing a large beam that can easily destroy even the strongest extended. Juzo is a habitual chain smoker, preferring the Tanegashima brand for their taste. He expresses distaste for children and humidity, out of fear his head will rust, and has no memory of his life before becoming an extended. I should also add, Juzo is one of 13 gun slave units produced during the war, and only one of 4 confirmed to still be alive in the present day. Now, this is just the main protagonist, and we are barely even scratching the surface. And don't get me started on the supporting cast of Tetsuro, Mary, Olivia, Cronin, Seven, Pepper, Victor. No Guns Life was an absolute blast getting through 13 volumes. The only downside is that there wasn't any more volumes. You know, if the writer Tasuku Karasuma comes back with another series, I am there for that. I can't wait till he comes up with something else because this was just so good. You know, it had like the best elements of cyberpunk. It had some great comedy that was thrown in there as well, unexpectedly. Awesome action sequences and took directions that I really did not see coming. That's what made it fun, you know? It was unpredictable, it was fun, it was serious when it needed to be. The characters were all memorable. The whole thing just flew by, and that's what I really enjoyed about No Guns Life. Hold up, let's just stop for a second here. Let's switch gears a little bit. This is Dandadan by Yukinobu Tatsu. A nice recommendation by you guys, and oh boy, I was not ready for this. So the story goes like this. Momo Ayase is a high school girl who believes in ghosts but not aliens, while her classmate Ken Takakura believes in aliens but not ghosts. In a bet to determine who is correct, the two decide to separately visit locations associated with both the spooky and the extraterrestrial. Guess what happens then? Nothing. They both go home, become best friends, live happily ever after, and concede they were both wrong. Very wholesome manga. You didn't buy that, did you? Okay, things get crazy. I mean, hilariously crazy. Momo gets abducted by pervy aliens that want to steal banana organs, and Ken gets possessed by a ghost called Turbo Granny who wants to eat banana organs. Not sure if giggity? Ah, the hell with it, giggity. Things get wilder as Momo has her psychic abilities enabled by the aliens by accident, and Ken gets powerful from his possession, albeit he can't control it without Momo's help. With their powers combined, they make Captain Planet, oh wait no, a superstar duo that can now fight both the supernatural and the spiritual, and that's just the first chapter. Now by the way, Momo has a granny, and when I first saw her, whoa, giggity giggity giggity. Also, I gotta know what moisturizer she uses. It's safe to say this was both hilarious and exhilarating, and you guys are right. I will be running to the store for more volumes. I'm gonna be very honest with you guys here. When I started reading Dandadan, I honestly thought you guys were trolling me because the beginning gets so absurd, so crazy, so giggity that I was taken aback a little bit. I was a bit speechless, right? I should have actually noticed it says explicit content right there in the corner of the manga. I should have realized what I'm getting myself into. But the more I read, the more I realized this is really cool. It doesn't take itself seriously. It has some great moments of action and adventure, but it's also just really funny and goofy and over the top and a little bit scary at times, which is awesome. And of course, Momo's grandma. I'm here for that. I actually can't remember her name. I can't remember if her name was even mentioned in this. But if she had her own manga, I'll be there for that. I'll be first in line picking that up. By the way, my partner, she asked me a very important question. She said, do I have an anime or manga waifu? And obviously I had to really think about that. And gave her a very suitable answer with, let me get back to you on that one. But after having read this, I think Momo's grandma is at the top of the list. Now let's talk Fire Punch by the same writer that made this. I'm going somewhere with this, so please bear with me. Fire Punch takes place on an Earth that has become frozen over and barren by the hands of an ice witch. The protagonist, Agni, is a young man who has the blessing of regeneration. Just like Wolverine or Deadpool, he can heal and regrow limbs, and so can his sister Luna. After his village succumbs to inextinguishable flames by another individual who has a blessing of the eternal flame, by the way, you can think of blessings as powers. Agni is then left constantly on fire, leaving him in anguish and vowing to get revenge. The story takes some dark turns in this harsh dystopian landscape, where human cruelty knows no bounds. Despite its hard-to-swallow themes and shocking material, I feel compelled to know what happens next in this twisted world. Fire Punch made a big impression on me. I loved it from the get-go. It was so much darker than I thought it would be. I didn't expect it to be like that. But then again, it is Tatsuki Fujimoto, so I kind of understand where his Chainsaw Man inspirations come from. Such a pleasant surprise to know that he hit the ground running as a mangaka so strong. You know, I don't know if he pitched any other ideas in the past, but this first volume, it makes me want to pick up the rest of the volumes, and I will with time. Concluding a story as a writer is probably one of the hardest things that you can do. So seeing how he wraps this up, it's going to be very interesting to see how he might handle Chainsaw Man. Great recommendation, guys. Thank you so much. I loved it. And I'll be picking up everything else he writes. Now let's revert back to my original question. Why does manga make me feel dumb sometimes? You see, all of this seems to boil down to one thing: concepts. In the simplest terms, a concept is a name or label that regards or treats an abstraction as if it had concrete or material existence, such as a person, a place, or a thing. In short, an abstract idea. And manga? Well, stories in general, but manga does this exceptionally well. Every time we experience a new manga, we jump into a whole new world filled with new concepts that we need to familiarize ourselves with. Now, these concepts are so wildly different and imaginative from one mangaka to the other, even from one of their pieces of work to the other. Now, in contrast, let's look at Marvel Comics for a second, which I love, by the way, but every time you jump into one of their comics, you might not be faced with the mental battle of familiarizing yourself with new concepts, because a lot of them have already been established. For example, hey, it's Spider-Man that goes pew pew pew. Hey, it's the other Spider-Man that goes pew pew bzz. Oh, and that guy that goes blah. Okay, I know that was silly and I know it's not that simple, but characters with powers who engage in an eternal struggle for supremacy are something that is consistently prevalent throughout the epic universe that is Marvel Comics. Now, we can say Image Comics is like the manga, but for the West, with its varied and complex concepts, with a sea of epic characters and genres just like manga. And you would be right to think that. But let's not forget, Image Comics began in 1992 with its unique stories and concepts, but modern manga commenced in 1902. So it's fair to say the Japanese got a little head start, allowing their creativity to run wild and free for a little bit longer in the comic industry. And they used this time to continuously make up new concepts, as opposed to Marvel and DC, which would have doubled down on making new and interesting characters and worlds. Whereas mangakas have been pushing the boundaries of creativity with strange and new ideas, and they have to do this to compete with not only the likes of Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, Image Comics, but with all the other creators in the manga space, which is why manga stories can come across as a little out there sometimes, in hopes that they are successful and stand out in the masses. On a side note, here's a fun fact for you. Transformers was invented in 1984. Now, the Japanese equivalent, Gundam, was invented in 1979. Some food for thought here. Japan's wild imagination was first off the mark, with giant robots whacking each other. Now, granted, there are differences, but let's not overlook the key concept here, which originated from the brilliant mind of Yoshiyuki Tomino. Even more of a fun fact, Transformers began with the 1980s Japanese toy lines Microchange and Diaclone. They presented robots able to transform into everyday vehicles, electronic items, or weapons. It makes you wonder though, have there been any other things in the West that have been inspired by Japanese creations? I'm inclined to say probably. In essence, manga has the ability to confuse us a little bit because it is constantly introducing us to new concepts, that being new worlds, new characters, different genres, mishmashing genres together, and so on. Doing all of this with a considerable amount of emotional depth, intricate character development, and goofy quirks, which come with Japan's cultural norms. It is not to say Western comics are simple, because they can get very complex. But think of it this way, Marvel and DC have their own universe. Now manga has individual writers, each with their own universe, So yeah, it can get a bit much when you are jumping between manga as you learn to familiarize yourself with each of these universes that have their own worlds, characters, rules, concepts. Take for example, No Guns Life, which throws words at you like extended, reconstruction agency, Breruren, GSU, harmony, and handler. These all have deep meanings, but in the context of No Guns Life. So you can see how there is a need to learn a new language when stepping into a new manga. Wow. So in essence, manga has the ability to bamboozle me a little bit sometimes, and hopefully I'm not the only one. So please tell me in the comments below, what manga did you find to be very complex and difficult and has varied and interesting concepts? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, a big thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll hit you up soon.